According to the press secretary, Mr. Carney, the president's position on Social Security is the same today as it was in January. Here, in fact, is what the president had to say on the subject in the State of the Union address in January.
To put us on solid ground, we should also find a bipartisan solution to strengthen Social Security for future generations. We must do it without putting at risk current retirees, the most vulnerable, or people with disabilities, without slashing benefits for future generations, and without subjecting Americans' guaranteed retirement income to the whims of the stock market.
With me now, one of the most stalwart defenders of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, Senator Bernie Sanders, the independent of Vermont. Senator, good evening.
Good to be with you, Keith.
As I just suggested, defenders of whatever the president's doing here say that it actually amounts to 14 cents less of an increase per month per recipient in the future. Ryan Grim just suggested those could be the most expensive 14 cents of all times. Where does the White House stand, and what's your opinion of its opinion?
Well, I don't know where the White House stands, but I know where I stand. The truth of the matter is today that the way COLAs are determined for seniors understates their situation because seniors are very dependent and their spending is focused on health care and prescription drugs, not on computers or flat screen TVs. And the cost of health care is going up a lot faster than general inflation. So to my mind, the COLA today understates the needs of seniors. To lower that COLA would be an outrage and extremely unfair. And in fact, the older you get, the more it would cost you. So we're talking about seniors getting $500 a year less when they're 75 years of age. And if you're poor, that's a lot of money.
Senator, some quotes from Leader Pelosi from late this afternoon. Let me read these to you and get your reaction. We have been very clear. Democrats are not supporting, House Democrats are not supporting any cuts in benefits for Social Security or Medicare. Any discussion of Medicare or Social Security should be on its own table. Do not consider Social Security a piggy bank for giving tax cuts to the wealthiest people in our country. Are you to some degree reassured by Nancy Pelosi's comments?
Well, I'm very happy with what Nancy stated. And essentially what she is saying is the simple truth, is that Social Security has not contributed 1 penny to our deficit or our national debt. It's funded by a payroll tax. Workers contribute, employers contribute. It has a $2.6 trillion surplus, can pay out every benefit for the next 25 years. So we can argue about how we strengthen Social Security, make it sustainable for 75 years rather than 25 years, but the idea of putting it on the table and say that we have to deal with Social Security for deficit reduction is absolutely wrong, and it is unacceptable. Last point that I would make, Keith, is when President Obama was candidate Obama running against John McCain, he was very critical of McCain for suggesting that there would be cuts in benefits in Social Security. Obama promised the American people that he would defend Social Security, not raise the retirement age, not cut COLAs. And I hope very much that he will keep that promise to the American people.
Well, what happens if indeed the changes to Social Security and perhaps to Medicare or Medicaid that the president is willing to enable are not trivial, are not just waste related? What do liberals and what do Democrats do about it then?
They say, no, Mr. President, we ain't going to let it happen. I have been working very hard, and the Budget Committee in the Senate has been working very hard to develop a budget which speaks about shared sacrifice. Keith, the middle class of this country is hurting. Poverty is increasing. Unemployment is sky high. We have seniors who can't afford the food that they need. To suggest, as the Republicans are suggesting, that we balance the budget on the backs of the sick, the children, the elderly, the poor, is morally unacceptable and economically a very bad policy, especially at a time when the richest people are becoming richer and their effective tax rates are the lowest in 60 years, when corporations are making huge profits and in some cases pay nothing in taxes. Clearly, you need to ask the rich and large corporations to pay their fair share. I believe it should be 50% of deficit reduction. I believe we can take a hard look at military spending. That's what we need to do, not balance the budget on the backs of the elderly and the vulnerable.
and on the rock of our modern American society. Senator Bernie Sanders, the independent of Vermont, as always, great thanks, sir.
Good to be with you.
The Rupert Murdoch scandal tonight. The editor in charge of phone hacking is to be arrested